Hi everyone, my name is Lydia, and this is what I wish they taught me about econometrics and introduction. In this video, we're going to talk about the order condition for IV estimations, which hopefully should answer the question, do you have enough instruments? Okay. So we've seen the setup of the general 2SLS model, and now we're asking the fundamental question, how many instruments do we actually need? The answer comes from exactly the order condition, and this is the first requirement for 2SLS to actually work at all. The most basic requirement is that you need at least one instrument for each endogenous variable. Okay, so more precisely, what the order condition is telling you is that the number of instruments needs to be greater or equal to the number of endogenous variables. Okay, so it's a counting rule, and it's literally the first thing that you need to check. But why do we need to check this? Think about what 2SLS is doing, okay? We're trying to identify the causal effect for each endogenous variable using only the clean variation provided by the instruments. So if you have two endogenous variables, but one instrument, then that one instrument can only tell you one story. It cannot separately identify the effect of X1 and the effect of X2, which are your two endogenous variables. You need at least as many instruments as endogenous variables to have enough information so that you can identify all the causal effects. Okay, so in a sense, you'll have to think about it as if you're solving simultaneous equations. If you have two unknowns, you need at least two equations. If you have two endogenous variables, you need at least two instruments. Okay? So let's look at what happens in those different case scenarios. Let's say that we have here the number of instruments, and we've got here the number of endogenous variables. If we have one instrument and one endogenous variable, we have what we call a just identified model, and it's fine to go ahead and work with this model. If you have two or more instruments and you still have one endogenous variables, you have what we call an over-identified model, and it's still fine. You can work with this. However, if you have one instrument and you have two endogenous variables, then this is an under-identified model. You can't even work with this. Okay, so the information that you would get cleaned up by the instrument is not enough because you've got both X1 and X2 to get clean information from, and X1 and only X1 or X2 is going to get that clean or uncontaminated variation through this unique instrument. And again, if you have two instruments and two endogenous variables, you go back to having a just identified model, which is fine for you to work with. And if you have three or more instrumental variables for the two endogenous variable, then you have an over-identified model, and it's still fine for you to work with this, okay? So in the just identified, you have exactly enough instruments, exactly enough information. For the over-identified, you have more instruments that needed, 2SLS works, and in the case of this over-identification that you see in here, a test becomes possible, which, as we've mentioned in previous videos, is the Sargan-Hansen test, okay? Now, under-identification is not fixable with better econometrics. If you don't have enough instruments, you cannot estimate all causal effects. The only solution is to find more instruments, okay? So when the order condition fails and you have fewer instruments than endogenous variable, the 2SLS simply cannot be computed. So imagine you have a system of equations with 3 unknowns and you have only one equation. Can you do anything to solve it? Unfortunately, no, okay? So in practice, if you try to run this with the software, what the software will do for you is either throw you an error, or whatever it's going to produce is going to be meaningless results, which is not useful. So the order condition must be satisfied before anything else. Now, the other thing that you need to remember is that the order condition is necessary, but not sufficient. Okay? So that means that even if you satisfy the order condition, it does not guarantee you that the 2SLS will work. So you can have enough instruments in terms of counting, but if they are all essentially measuring the same thing, then they don't provide independent information. Okay? So this is where the other condition, which we will look into more deeply in a separate video, the rank condition, comes into play, okay? Think about it this way. Having 2 instruments that are perfectly correlated with each other is not better than having simply one instrument. You need instruments that are genuinely independent, and that's what the rank condition is going to formalize. So the order condition requires at least as many instruments as endogenous variables, necessary counting rule that must be satisfied, however, not sufficient. In the next video, we'll cover the rank condition, which checks not just whether we have enough instruments, but whether they are sufficiently independent to do the job. So stay tuned, and I'll see you then.